Welcome back. But at any rate, welcome to Myths and Legends 2024. I believe this is our 19th Myths and Legends panel. I'm thrilled. How many folks in the room are alumni? That's fantastic. Welcome back. My name is Eddie Duran. I'm also an alum of Stockton, and I coordinate Stockton's Writing Center. And I've had the honor of coordinating this program as well for the past several years. I'm going to get started now, or we're going to get started now, and I'm going to ask our panelists to please introduce themselves briefly with your name, your relationship to Stockton. Are you alumni? Are you faculty staff? And when and in what capacities you were. Yeah, please.
Okay, I'm Dick Colby. I've been a faculty member since the Mayflower. Most vividly, the weather on the boardwalk in the fall of 1971 was uniformly bleak, with gulls crying and and just cold and miserable. I was miserable as Boston, where I was an underground. I guess that's enough.
And to follow up with that, I was a student when he was listening to those gulls and listening to the water ripple in the ocean, as we in the Mayflower were doing Kundalini yoga on the mezzanine, listening to the gulls and the ocean. And that's my roots in Stockton, as just a student, not a faculty member. Thank you for being here.
I'm Charlie Harlins. I'm this math faculty member here from 1974 to 2006. And this is the first year I think that they've had non-Mayflower people on the on panel. So you got people 72, 73, 74. I'm amazed at this turnout. Excited to see people here. Is there anybody in the room who took a math course in the late 70s? Whom did you have? Do you remember? Not you. Not many of us. You were so hard here. I remember coming. Ross and I came here from Southern California, where we were graduate students, and when we came over to campus in August. College Drive, as it was known then, now very Ferris Drive. The College Drive wasn't covered all the way through to Pomona Road. And we stopped by the campus in August, and it was green. You know, we left Southern California where the golden hills were brown. It had rains in April. And I pulled the car over to the side of the road just to get out and look. And I startled a deer that was about 20 feet in front of the car, and I thought, I'm gonna love this place. And we did love it, and we stayed until we retired, and we're still here.
I'm Roz Gerland, and been here since 1974. I taught biology, mostly cellular, but did the intro biology on organisms and evolution too. And I guess Charlie sort of told you where we came from. And we arrived here, and I was teaching embryology the first term, but I was also very pregnant. At the end of the term, we were on strike in the late November around Thanksgiving, and Jason decided to arrive to strike. So I was on strike, and when I had him, I called in and said, I'm still on strike, but I brought him to class after we came back after Thanksgiving, and my students got to see this baby that they had seen pushing out. And they got to see the live result of the embryonic development. Really have enjoyed being at Stockton. Thank you.
Excuse me for remaining seated, my back hurts and everything else. My name is Tony Marino, and like Dick, I'm an original Mayflower faculty member, one of the original 55 faculty members that started this school. along with other people. And it's joy to be here. I've been here on this panel for 18 of those 19 years. So I'm looking around and it looks like none of you have ever been here before, so I could tell all my stories over again. I've already met a student of mine, Roger, God bless you. He learned a lot in my class, but it was from the other students rather than mine. I was a member of the sociology faculty. There were 4 of us in that original group. And 2 of us are still in the area, retired and so forth. But I'll have a lot to say about the early Stockton if you ask the questions, and Eddie, I assume you're prepared to get a lot of questions from the audience, and we can, okay, good. So I'll stop at this point and say hello to one of my former students.
I didn't learn anything.
He came here directly. Came here directly from the prison up in.
Yeah, my name's Jose Delgado. I'm a 73 graduate. I came here basically because I transferred from Brookdale. I was working full-time, going to Brookdale, and a lot of people from Brookdale Community College, Monmouth County, told me about a brand new college, and they showed me the curriculum, what the school was about. I said, well, I'm not doing anything right now that's pressing, so I decided to apply and had 2 wonderful years here with wonderful professors and great students. Learned a lot out of the classroom. I learned as much as I did in the classroom. And there are many stories that hopefully will get out. I must tell you that I feel a little bit intimidated seeing so many alumni here. This is the largest group of alumni that we've ever had at this panel, which is a good sign. And someday in the future, you will be sitting on this side of the table and we can keep this going. That's about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hilda Crespo, and I'm also with the inaugural cohort of students that went to the Stayed at the Mayflower Hotel. I came today from Washington, D.C. to be here, and I look forward to hearing the stories today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Before we launch into our questions, I hope to make the suggestion that we start with some context, because, you know, to think about Stockton at the beginning and what the ideas were behind this place, it's important to sort of bring ourselves, well, I wasn't there, but to bring everybody back to what was going on in the country more broadly at that time. And so I'm going to ask Dick to please give us a little bit of that context.
Okay. There was maybe I should just say it all started with the Berkeley Free Speech Movement. Yeah. Before, in which I happened to be one of the people, 814 students and faculty who were arrested and went through the trial process in the following year. That started, in addition to the question of free speech on campus at Berkeley, it was also the question of students being unsatisfied with the nature of the education system. And we organized ourselves into a new university groups as well. And there started, as a result of that, a whole new college at Berkeley with different kinds of educational techniques. At the same time, elsewhere in the country, there was the invention of new colleges, Evergreen in Oregon State, Hampshire College in Massachusetts. And Stockton was going to be another one of those, was going to be one of 5 new colleges that were written up by a Harvard professor in a book that was published in about 1978 or 79, I think. Some of my colleagues will know more about that. But Stockton's main educational innovation came out of its first vice president, a guy named Wes Tiller. He's the one who invented general studies, the idea that faculty could teach anything they wanted, and students could take anything they want, and not just the introduction to literature, introduction to sociology, introduction to psychology, which was what it had been in most American colleges and universities before that time. So Wes Tiller wanted even to change the modules of teaching, so we would have
some courses that would be taught only early in the morning, and some courses that would be taught only at night. And he invented the 3-semester system, which was used elsewhere with long fall and spring terms, with a short winter term where you could take courses intensively. I'm pleased to say that one of the courses that I taught intensively, that included a trip to Oak Ridge, Tennessee for a week to study nuclear radiation mechanisms, has attending us with one of my students from that class. He's wonderful, Robert Roach. Lovely. We've also the opportunity to take languages intensively, because that is a way of teaching foreign languages, although I don't think it was ever attempted here at Stockton. But there was a wave of new innovation that went on about that time. Maybe some of my colleagues would be able to remember some of West Chile's other innovations, especially Tony.
I have trouble remembering anything.
Well, I think the other thing to remember is that at that time when the college was being formulated, put together, there was a lot of things happening in the United States. There was the war, you know, I don't even have to tell you when I say the war.
Which war?
When you say the war in Vietnam, that was a war to define that generation, and it's still impacting us now. So there was a rebellion around that, coalescing around that. There was the women's movement, where it was an incredible movement, and it's still going on. Moving forward, moving back, it's still going on. And there were the free speech movement. There was people challenging authority. Television at the time was influencing us. So the students and the faculty that came together were all influenced, and were on the same page, the same wavelength. And we were very lucky. We had professors, not all of them, but we had professors that understood that they were, I don't want to overuse this word, but they were more like shepherds. They weren't teachers like putting stuff in your brain. It was teaching you how to yourself put things in your mind and how to explore and to question, because that's the way they lived their lives. That was the way they did it. A perfect example, which is a story Tony told originally, which I'm going to tell because he may have forgotten, is that the faculty actually had a meeting. And one of the things they discussed is, how should we have the students address us? Doctor, professor, and the students decided, the professors decided, call us by our first name. That's why we know our professors from their first name. Now, there was some exception. Even I had one professor that called me doctor or professor. But anyway, most of the professors were like that. So that was the kind of external and internal forces that were sort of like, had the framework of what we did at Stockton. And remember, everything that we did at that time was never done at Stockton. It was never done because there had been no Stockton before we got there. So everything was new. Every question had never been asked before. The answer had never been given. So it was a very exciting time to be in. Well said.
Also, at that time, the Voting Rights Act Amendment, I think 14, was passed where the age was lowered from 21 to 18. Just in time for bodies to go into the war, unfortunately. And also, the Women's Equal Rights Pathway Amendment began action. It took a while, but that's more or less around the time when that movement started.
Well, they've gotten us started on our next question by giving us the example of faculty determining how they'd like to be addressed in the classroom. But I'd like to invite additional panelists to walk us through some other examples of how the wider context of the time period affected those early times of Stockton.
Well, throughout high school, my experience was very involved in participating with the Quakers in doing so much protesting in Washington DC. And at the time, living in Medford, near McGuire and Fort Dix, it brought it to such a point at which those of us in that area who were so opposed to the war, yet had community links to McGuire and Fort Dix, we became very involved in protesting in Washington, DC. And the Morristown Quaker group was very active in gathering us from the local high schools. And we took the buses and did our protesting. We made signs, and we did that for Kent State. We did it actually on McGuire and Fort Dix near the entrance where it was legal for us to do it, although there was so much dissension from, as you can imagine, the people who were going back and forth into the base. But we did that, and my senior paper in high school was SDS and all the ramifications of that. And my brother had just become accepted as an official conscientious objector. So that was my roots, which then wanted to continue on with a kind of forum in my college courses that would help me to nurture this pacifist, I suppose is the word, more gentle, more kinder way of living and taking courses that had to do perhaps more with nature. So I'm leading up to Stockton, but in between high school and when I was accepted here into the charter class, I was actually in the charter class at Burlington County College. And I was the first female accepted there as a student, and began there the month after Woodstock. And yes, I did go. I have my tickets to you.
No, I didn't know.
I almost So, so September of 71 or 69, beginning a new school, a new county college, not on the campus because there were no campus buildings yet. We were in trailers as the county college was developing into a county college. And it was very near to my family home. So it was a very simple commute. And I spent my 2 years there, and just a wonderful coincidence that this university called Stockton, or at the time college, was emerging in the Pine Barrens, and that would be such a wonderful area for me to continue on with the kinds of interesting topics and needs that I had to go on with my college work. So there I was in the Mayflower, and we know what happened from there. A lot of changes after the Mayflower.
I would like to add two more things that sort of added a little spice to Stockton in those days. One, there was a large number of veterans in the university. Many of them had fought in Vietnam. They added a mixture that they were very serious kind of people. I mean, they could party, but they were very serious people. The other thing was a contingent of female faculty members that were really pushing for the women's movement and women's rights, the recognition, basically the recognition of women as equal human beings to men as in terms of society, the overall society, power structure. And I think that also had an impact on the type of courses that were given in certain departments and the attitude that permeated the comradeship in the student body.
Well, 73 was the year that Roe v. Wade was enacted, so. Let me pick up that topic. I was teaching the human sexuality course at Stockton. I was one of the organizers I had.
The most popular courses.
And
I thought that was business of hell a ways out.
and I'll get back to Roe versus Wade, but Jose also should take some credit for that. He and another student from Brookdale, where had taken a human sexuality course up there, thought Stockton should have one, so. I don't know, I remember it. Norman Einhorn, he later became an ophthalmologist, right? See, I remember that. Anyway, Norman and Jose came to me in the very first term of Stockton. I was a sociologist. I was teaching a demography course that Roger took 2 years later. And that course covered the issues of human fertility and the abortion issue, pre-Roe versus Wade, 71. By Jose, we had a thing in the curriculum that disappeared within about 5 years, that if 2 students approached a faculty member with a petition that had 10 total student names on it, with an outline of a course they would like taught, would you teach it? And that's how a lot of our general studies courses began. No, it said a lot, not only in sociology, but also in the health sciences and biology and even some business courses developed that way. And one of the courses he said was human sexuality. Would you teach it? Now, I had gone to a Jesuit undergraduate university, but by the time I got to Stockton, I'd spent 5 years at Cornell.
Well,
Well,
And the Jesuit influence had been washed away, at least the way of wearing a suit and tie. But trying to shorten the story up, I found another faculty member, her name was Jackie Stanton, who was a psychology professor. I'm a sociology professor. I'm a white married Catholic. Jackie was a young, single African-American Protestant with a Protestant background. And I said, we'll make a good team. We did it, we got together, and it took us about a year to get the course into the curriculum. And it's still, as far as I know, it's still in the curriculum, but much different than the way we set it up. And so that's how the human sexuality course started here at Stockton, and it goes back to the fact that Wes Tilley and the original organizers of the theory behind this college, let's have a college where students can actually tell professors what courses they would like taught, if they're not already in the curriculum. And Jose and Norm took advantage of that. I learned a lot because I had a lot to learn. I remember that summer of 71 to 72, I spent mostly in front of my apartment building in Summers Point with a bunch of whole free human sexuality textbooks that had been sent to me. And I'm sitting out there reading about human sexuality. And I think some of my neighbors must have thought I was some kind of deviant. And my wife. They were onto something. Yeah, they really had to take, well, didn't they? But actually, my first wife, who unfortunately died many years ago, she was a strictly brought up Irish Catholic, and she really felt nervous. Wondered what was I doing? But anyway, got the course into the curriculum, and the first year we had such a demand for it, we had a different kind of admissions and registration system. We could have had a course with 300 to 400 people in it. So we had to make quick decisions, and Jackie and I got together and we decided we will accept 50 students, 25 men, 25 women. And we were starting to get a little political problems from the administration. We're conservative South Jersey, this course may have some problems, so forth and so on. So I took advantage of something Jose mentioned. We had a lot of returns Vietnam War veterans, and many of them were state troopers at the time they came here. And they had, at that time, up at Seeker, the training facility, confiscated pornos that they had up there. At that time, were not allowed on the open market. And I decided I'm going to have 5 state troopers in the course, basically to learn from them. They've got a lot of stories. and also frankly to cover my rear end. Because I knew if I had 5 cops in the course, they couldn't say I was goofy, crazy, and the cops, if they liked the course, which they turned out really to like the course, I could have had almost every state trooper that was enrolled in Stockton in the course. I also chose, made sure we had 5 women who were at least 50 years old or older. And there were a number of those early students. Widowed, divorced women who come back. So we had elderly women by the young student definition. We had police, and that's how, one of the reasons how we stayed out of trouble with that course. They kept us online. It also provided film, which at that time would be defined as pornographic films. We had one night we called Porno Freakout Night. And the state police would bring them in. Some of them were not available in the open market yet in the United States.
But that didn't happen the first year, that happened the second
Yeah.
year. Because I didn't see it.
So let me end it right there. That's how a lot of courses developed at the general studies course, through that method of student suggestion. And that's one of the things that made the early Stockton somewhat different. I'm going to ask Charlie and Roz. They come a couple of years later. What was it like at that time about getting a new course for you guys?
Well, there were already courses in the curriculum that we were asked sometimes to fill, take over, the people had left. And so that there was some of that. I don't think, so when we first came here, I was asked to teach certain kinds of courses.
The regular biology course.
Well, yeah, they were biology oriented. What I remember is that I arrived here at 27, and many of my students, because they were GIs from before, or women who were now coming back to school, and or whose family said the son can go to Rutgers or Princeton, but you can go to the college right down the street, you know. And some of them were really good students too. So but they were older students and they were great. But so I had people asking me for advice, and here I was 27, wet, just coming up right from graduate school. I didn't know what I was doing, what advice I could give them, but that's my memory.
And I had similar experience. Rose actually got the job here and I followed her. And I adjuncted the first year and got to spend lots of time with our new baby. That was a great year. But the general studies curriculum, which we were building from the ground up, and we changed it a number of times. Groups of faculty, large groups of faculty used to come in on the weekends to have meetings about general studies. And after Dick Bjork left the college and Jim Judy, I think, was acting president for a year, and then we had Peter Mitchell. And Peter came in one Saturday to see what was going on with his faculty meeting about general studies. I think by that time we had about 165 or 170 faculty. And we had 110 of them meeting in big room at B Wing. And Peter was astounded, you know, nobody made us be there, no one was paying us to be there. We needed to work on general studies, and that was the kind of commitment you had from the faculty. Tony asked about starting new courses, and Dick referred to faculty being able to teach whatever they were interested in and learn along with the students. I certainly had that experience. I was interested in the Soviet dissident movement and human rights, and I, with lots of help from faculty in other divisions, taught first the Solzhenitsyn course, then Sakharov got a Nobel Prize in '77, and the next year the course was Solzhenitsyn and Sakharov. Then it became a Soviet dissidents course, and one year the Arts and Humanities dean, the RU dean, listed it as a general arts and humanities course without consulting me. It could well have been a general social science course. I finally ended up preferring to teach juniors and seniors that had more of a context. And so it was what would now be a GIS course. And we got an Amnesty International student chapter here. I was the faculty advisor for the first Amnesty student group in 1980 to 85. And then we got a local Amnesty International group starting in 1989, and I'm still active with that group. So it was a very heady time. You know, we were creating a new curriculum. It took a lot of energy. Those new courses that we created and taught, the general studies course, were a lot harder to teach than the courses, you know, in our discipline of academic training. And they were exciting for us, exciting for the students. Ross also taught urban studies school.
I got into bioethics,
Yeah, we did some team teaching, Ross team taught bioethics.
my team taught was good, but,
Pretty sure. Another thing that I remember, I think it was Tony that brought it up in one of the past Missing Legends panels, was the way where the faculty was housed, where their offices were. They were in a large room with partition.
Yeah.
And you can have a history professor, biology professor, sociology, and, you know, interdiscipline all over the place. So they weren't in little rooms or a different building, you know, this discipline or that discipline, they were all together. And they had more opportunities to talk to each other. And I think that also, that cross-pollination, I think, also was important. Just the way where you put people has an important impact on how they do things.
And
I agree.
Jose, I'll add that continues to this day. There's a group of faculty from various divisions that for a while were meeting, mostly retirees, who were meeting for breakfast every other Wednesday at Hillcrest down on the White Horse Pike. And during the pandemic, that shifted to a Zoom meeting on every Wednesday morning. And so 3 days ago, I was on a Zoom call. Ross and I were on a Zoom call with Tony and Dick, Mike Keller from Environmental Studies, Jack Connor from the writing, program, Mike Hosick from Geology, Alice Gitchell, who taught Environmental Studies, and who now lives up in Connecticut. And we're still talking about every week about what's going on in Stockton. And
May I interrupt with one little question? When did the decision to use H's and S's and N's instead of grades? That really loused me up, my grad.
Well, that's why.
How long did that last?
Everybody, it started in the beginning, it lasted what?
So you're 75 or something.
Yeah.
Well, 75
we
when I
graduated
graduated.
out.
I think there,
Hold this on. How many students were there at the time that it was HSN? Oh, my.
yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people. were making this whole-
And whose big idea was that? Because that really was a problem. But it hurt me, it hurt me all the way down.
I got a question about that, because I was in that thing, and I came to Stockton because, for two reasons, fast fail classes, and as a fine arts major, I wasn't gonna have to take math or science. And then in April, Patsy Heck pulls me into her office and tells me, oh, we're changing the rules of the game. If you want to get a degree that says you're graduating from accredited college, in your senior year, you get to take 2 math, 3 lab science, or vice versa, and you cannot take any more art courses, and you cannot take any more business courses. So I want to know, did anybody actually walk across the stage getting a degree where they didn't have their grades converted?
Oh,
Where they were still where their degree said, like I was told mine would say, Stockton State College, an unaccredited college.
They were.
I had no problem
Yeah, we
with
were accredited.
transferring to Rutgers. When I left here with my H's and S's and and all that.
Mhm.
And I applied to the master's program, in New Brunswick, and I don't know if they were reciprocal in some way with the understanding of who we
Because it's
were,
still a state college.
but they were very fine with.
I'm just telling you, when I went for a teaching degree, they said this N could be anything from a D minus to, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
not an N, excuse me,
Look at
S,
that.
I'm sorry. Your S could be anything from what, B plus down to D minus. And if you're applying for a teaching job, they wanna know that you're smart, okay?
Yeah.
And that was, I had a lot of H's, thank God, in my field, but it still was questionable.
We don't have those comments.
Well, no, I just want to know, because I think it was, because if they're still on this earth, someone should tell them, don't ever start another college.
Well, they wanted to follow.
No,
we loved it. I loved it.
I know they
Certainly, in biology, because so many of the people taking biology, chemistry, wanted to be for law,
Doctors.
med school. It was med schools who would ask us to please convert whatever the HS
Yeah,
to, grade.
right.
And students really pushed in petition to have it go back to a traditional grade.
Yeah, I would basically say it was a student-generated movement. There was a
Oh, it
lot of,
was, yeah.
lot of us-
See, I, for
lot of
first
us
2
still on
years,
the
I was at a
faculty.
county school.
we may have been living in the past.
Yeah, yeah.
That phrase, we're talking about the '60s revolution.
Right.
And so there was, in faculty discussions at that time, a lot of pushback. No, we wanted.
Just because you were on that subject, I didn't mean to deter the whole thing,
We
I'm
wanted to
sorry.
be a different college.
Yeah.
And
We were different.
Go down the road, if you need.
Students came around with petitions
Yeah.
and, you could see, they had 32 courses and they had, this faculty member signing, this person got an H in my course and it was equivalent to,
Yeah, I came back after
and
graduating.
this person
that.
got S in my course and it would have been a B plus on it.
But the point here is that the students petition, and it was changed.
It was changed.
Well, that's what I wanted to know, when did that change after 75? Was it-
Yeah, I think about 76, 77.
Oh, right away then, it wasn't
It was,
very
it
long.
was early.
We reinvented the wheel in a lot of different.
I mean, I
shapes.
loved it so
And
much, I sent my
gradually
own
discovered
daughter.
why to
So,
use
we're okay.
round books.
If I may, that gentleman back there with the hat, you mentioned Roe versus Wade.
Yes.
Do you want to follow, some follow-up?
Well, no, but I think that the syllabus that you were speaking of, I remember seeing the book everywhere, was our bodies, ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I still can see so clearly.
Yeah.
Good pictures.
That they carried
And I still have
it
it.
everywhere. And,
Well, let me mention one way that Roe versus Wade decision immediately affected this college, especially its women students. Again, remember, I'm now the human sexuality
Right.
teacher along with a psychologist, and the both of us are getting now, as Roe versus Wade passed, people are right before it passed, women coming to both of us saying, I'm pregnant. How do I end this pregnancy without going to jail? This is step
Okay.
2.
Do you remember
Oh, let me
on
finish the
campus?
story.
Oh,
Let me finish
okay.
the story. So this is sometime in the second year of the college, 72, 73, before Roe versus Wade passed. Human sexuality course has been out there. And I'm getting, frankly, students coming to me, and the way they would say, do you know Judy so-and-so? And I said, yes. She's pregnant and she's a Catholic and she can't discuss this with her parents. You seem to know everything there is to know about human sexuality. Wow. Can you tell us what to do? I said, I'm going to pass the ball. By that time, a group of women faculty members, I won't mention names, most of them are passed away. They had already formed a group and spread the word among some of the faculty. If a young woman comes to you and says she needs some help on abortion, now those of you who are maybe devout Catholics will not like to hear that. But this group of women said, okay, abortion was already legal in 2 states, Hawaii and New York State. We're near New York State. So they formed a group of women who out of their own pocket funded, solicit other faculty member to help fund a group, group that would drive a woman up to a clinic in somewhere in New York City and stay with her until she was healthy again and bring her back. I don't know how many women did that, but it was double numbers. It was more than 10 that first year, prior to Roe versus Wade. When Roe versus Wade came through, now we could do all this openly in New Jersey, so we didn't have to do that anymore. So that's how we reacted at that time. We did not have counseling service at that time here in Stockton. The president, Dick, what's his?
Bjork.
Dick Bjork. Dick Bjork, who may be famous or not, but for the faculty, he became infamous very quickly. For political reasons, he thought we didn't need to have any kind of student services, and we would spend that money on something else, maybe a football team or something. I don't know. I was thinking he was going to spend that money on. But it was a number of years before we had any counseling services. So in that era, in the early 70s to the mid 70s, they came to faculty members like me for counseling. And I frankly would say I was not capable of doing that. If it were an academic issue, I'd love to counsel you. But if it's that kind of issue, I then refer them to one of our psychologists on staff. And a couple of them had counseling degrees and did it. And we began all legally. I remember writing an article for Argo entitled "The First Suicide on Campus," and it got a lot of attention. We hadn't had one yet, and I said part of the cost of that is we don't have a counseling service, and maybe we should do that. Dick, you were also advocating at that time, involved in that.
Yes, I was, and I remember counseling students, including suicide-prone students, and talking to them for hours on the telephone. But it wasn't a political decision of yours, it was an economic decision.
Yeah, that's right.
He wanted to make it cheap as possible.
Yeah.
He said students should be the same as people in the general society. If they need a doctor, they should go to a doctor.
Yeah.
I remember, excuse me, I do remember though, the Atlantic City Hospital Clinic coming here on campus and sharing with us females, once it was legal to have an abortion, as well as other Stockton Shield methods. They were promoting all these ways to help the female students on campus. And do any of you remember the any of that at all? I'm just the original doctor from the Atlantic City Clinic. And a friend of mine did go with this group and had a Delta Shield. Had complications with that and tried to return to this clinic for legal paperwork, for medical malpractice, and everything had been disposed of. But I know that they did try to make that effort.
I remember, what Stockton doing an internship in Planned Parenthood. And, so by then the abortion was legal. And there were so many young women that were dealing with issues of their reproductive rights. And it's really interesting that today, what are we dealing with? You know,
Same issue.
big health.
It's back.
It's back. Yeah.
Hilda, yeah, as you mentioned, and as Hilda just mentioned, you know, in South Carolina Avenue, there was a Planned Parenthood clinic. And they dealt with these issues, and so some of our faculty had to send people there. I can't remember her last name, but there was a woman named Sally who was the executive director down there, and she was great. And so that got us through the early years of having these issues come up.
Just earlier, there was a spirited conversation about Stockton's experimental grading system, and for some folks, how that did not work. I'd like to ask, were there other, again, thinking about that spirit of innovation at Stockton, were there other innovations at Stockton that lasted for some time, and after a while, this isn't really working how we thought it would?
Yes, the initial social life was going to be organized around structures called collegia. And every student was assigned to a collegia, and every faculty member was assigned to a collegia. But they didn't have once or twice or three times. They were gonna have intramural sports with different collegia opposing each other. It just never took off.
It was certainly done by a time.
It was all done by the third
yeah.
year. Yeah.
By the third year was gone. How about college council? Anybody ever researched?
Yeah, I was so tough.
To build a social life.
And it was like assigned to groups.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
randomly assigned,
Collegiate
with no
amount.
definition on exactly what they were, or what we were supposed to do when we got there, to the meeting. That was definitely not a good plan.
I was collegiate G.
I was L.
Well, I don't know, that's open island, I don't even know what I was.
They had a budget, each collegian had some amount of money.
Yes.
And there was a decision how to.
Yes.
Let me point out,
Mainly, we decided to buy cake.
Yes.
Where's the cake?
I don't know why you're not on this side of the table, you.
Next year, because we may not be. Collegium L. One woman came up and said, I suggest that we buy swans for Lake Fred. She thought white swans were just the next step for the development of Stockton. So then that was at the Mayflower. We came back and we were here a few weeks and all of a sudden you boom, boom, hunting seasons. I don't think.
More important innovation that didn't really work was the college governance, for which there was going to be a college council, which you got onto not by being voted into, but by signing up for a petition and being drawn by lot. There would be students, faculty, and staff on the college council, and it really did solve some of the early needs of the college was assigned to pick a college mascot, it was assigned to pick a college trademark, it was, but in the end, when push came to shove and real decisions needed to be made, like, do faculty get tenure here, that turned out to be not such a good way to do it.
Well, students were on the faculty review board.
That's right, that
And
was another innovation. Students have equal rights with faculty for deciding who gets tenure.
were
And
any of you
the
on,
president can overrule.
did any of you serve on a faculty review board?
No,
Students used to sit on for, when they were interviewing faculty, to hire faculty. Students were involved and they had an equal voice in deciding if a member person would get on.
Yeah, but also about tenure promotion.
Yeah, faculty review committees were 5 students and 5 faculty.
Whoa, that's
Never-
Yeah.
It was great,
That's
it's not very great.
wait, so none of us here remember
None
that.
of us remember that.
I think
Yeah.
that starts.
You obviously didn't pick the
You
right.
get picked.
They were all guys.
I have a
got-
shout out for Marjorie Wallace,
The
who,
librarian.
she was the librarian and a mother figure to all those of us who worked there on the work study program. A lovely, southern, warm, generous woman who was truly like a mother to us. She was very protective. And she had us doing jobs in the library. And my very good friend Deborah and I were very lucky to have been offered 2 openings for a trip for 8 days to London through Marjorie Wallace and her, I guess her association with Atlantic Community College. They were offering this trip. And there were vacancies, so Marjorie asked Deborah and I if we wanted to go to London for 8 days for $100, which include airfare, Kensington or what.
At Oxford, right?
I have, yeah, and Stonehenge
Yeah.
and seeing Jesus Christ Superstore, I think it was at the theater there, yeah. So Marjorie was a wonderful woman and
we in the library were moving the books that first, I guess, were at the Mayflower. And then they had to move all those books over to one of the newly built rooms here. And then from those boxes, they had to be arranged properly in the new library. Well, that was a huge job, and I have memories of putting in metal spines in the backbone of the books with this tool so that they wouldn't be stolen. And that was part of our work study program, but Marjorie was just a darling, lovely memory of one of my special people here.
She must have left in 70, before 70.
No, I also no, I she was here.
So what's the connection? I think
What-
that
I don't-
Stockton recruited some really well-prepared teachers and professors.
What building was that?
Professors.
What building was
And
that?
some of those professors left tenure positions to come to Stockton. And for some, it wasn't what they expected, but they stayed in there and made sure that students graduated. They provided a great experience for students.
Yeah, I think Hilda's comment just opened up with my thought is that many of the faculty consider themselves teachers first and then professors. I think, and I think that came across if you went to their classroom or you talked to them, if you were lucky enough afterwards, that they were teachers. They were not, you know, I'm the professor and I know everything in the discipline. That's not the attitude. And I think that had a positive impact on the,
Well, from a science point of view, what I thought was really good was that the students came, we gave the lectures and we also taught the labs. And when they came for office hours, we were the ones who taught them. No grad students were involved in that. So students who had never been to Rutgers or some other school where they had to deal with non-professors doing that, didn't appreciate what a gift they were given, that the teacher, faculty, professor was the person you dealt with at all levels of teaching. And that was special. It was special.
Let me ask you a question. How many people ever had Bill Daly in class?
Oh, I knew Bill.
one of the few ones you call Dr. Daly. You call
And he
him.
didn't have a PhD.
Well, it doesn't matter, but you didn't call him
What subject area was?
Bill.
He was a political science. How about Shelby Brown? How many of you?
Oh, was it Shelby who?
No.
Yeah, was it Shelby? Did Shelby have a Gestalt, encounter session? Is that who ran that?
That's true.
I remember that.
Shelby had the floating coffin he used to go into and.
Or hypnotic regression or something bizarre.
Shelby is still around and there's a group of us, some of them are current faculty, some of them are retired faculty. Who get together, about, once every month or so, at somebody's house for an opera. We'll look at, watch a DVD of an opera and discuss it. That's been going on for.
Just.
And Shelby and Theta, come to that, so we've seen Shelby recently.
One of the comments,
Shelby also had a cookie class.
Yes.
Yeah.
What?
Actual class. Sandy. You can meet at the.
Yeah.
25 students pushing their cars, they told us people was the first time. And that changed my life.
I still use the cast iron skillet that Shelby gave me because we also had a faculty gourmet cooking group at Shelby and Sandy.
I still have the formative.
Gentlemen, you were going to mention something?
Yeah, just one other credit to the faculty that was there and some of you who were there at the time. I think it was Newsweek, they do their annual college thing. Stockton was noted in its early years as having a faculty comparable to Harvard,
Yep.
Stanford,
Yep.
because of the way that they saw
Yeah, they're mostly
Of
paying with things.
course, I use,
There were exceptions, but.
another thing I like about my discipline staff is the data discipline. All the guys that taught us had their equity cards.
Yeah.
So they were giving us the real food of what to expect when
You're
we walk
talking about
off the
Dick
campus.
Ozerkis?
Hmm?
That Richard Ozerkis?
Dick Ozerkis?
You're talking about the fine arts or the
Yeah,
arts?
fine arts, yeah. Taxi hacks.
Bill,
Oh, yeah.
Bill Bird.
Yeah, Bill Burr.
Oh, God, I love him, he left Boston.
All right, let me ask this question. How many of you are from RU, that division? Fine arts would be an RU, wouldn't it? Okay.
I'm fine arts.
How about
Theater
social?
education, any other?
Well,
theater
at that time,
education?
it was no education.
Len Solo.
Yep, there was.
Yeah.
John Ball, Bob Lambert.
Yeah, I remember John.
I did my student teaching at, well, I did junior practicum in Holy Spirit. Oh, yes, there was an
Well,
education.
one of the things
I
that,
went to, I
let me make
did
this
my
point.
program through John Paul as well.
Yes, yes, he was
one of
wonderful.
the, one of the theories of our first president, he didn't want counseling, and he didn't want us to become another New Jersey state teaching college.
Well, you
So-
prepared me very well for it, whether you wanted to
Okay,
do
I
it
know.
or not.
Let me continue. What, in the first 5 or 6 years, there was nothing called a major in teaching. What there was a major in history with a minor in student teaching.
Yeah, yep.
Okay,
That's where I
TDEP
got
was
mine.
developed, TPEB, if you remember. Now, for example, I was in sociology, so I had a number of my students who wanted to become K-12 teachers. And I had explained to them, well, if you really want to get certified immediately as a teacher, you better go to Glassboro State College.
That's what I was told, the end of my first year, if you really want to
If
do
you want to
this.
stay here,
Well, I
stop,
had
let
no
me finish,
problem.
man, let me finish. If you wanted to be a social studies teacher or a history teacher, get your degree in history at Stockton, and we will have a minor student teaching program. I remember setting it up with Atlantic City High School. So a number of my students, by the second year, were doing some student teaching in Atlantic City High School or in part of the 12K system. But it wasn't until much later, and my son who's now been here 30 years as a staff member, he graduated with a degree in 1987 from Stockton. It wasn't until later at that point, the 1980s, that we really developed a formal student teaching program. And
Well,
that
what was I
always.
part of with John Paul then, because he.
Man, you went through the
monitored me.
TDEP program. It was
Well-
not a formal student.
Well, it worked.
I know.
Yeah,
Whether it's certified.
I'd make an argument.
My
it was better.
degree says theater education.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I,
But
similar to your experience, Len Solo was my mentor, and I took many courses for teaching with the goal to become a teacher.
Mhm.
And so I took also a lot of Pat Heck's theater courses and ended up getting from Stockton certification to teach speech arts and dramatics K through 12.
Right.
So I walked in commencement June of 73 from Stockton. However, to properly graduate with a teaching degree, I did my student teaching with Manya Bean at the new school
Yes.
throughout the 74 school year. And then I not only had my certification for K
What
through
is the
12.
new school?
The new school was a school predominantly of faculty.
Right.
Students,
the
children.
Those parents
Children.
would it be
Yes.
connected to the new school in New York? No.
No.
Okay.
Mine being this new school, which were mostly the children of faculty. And I have a photo here of some of the children in Manya. It was on Route 9, it was in a church, somewhere in between Pleasantville and Upseekin. And I spent hours there getting my teaching, student teaching done, So when I
Yes, my
graduated,
student
then
teaching was at,
I had my degree.
at a regular public school in Linwood. Okay, I had no problems there. I did my practicum through Holy Spirit. Okay.
What
and
year
it
did
was
you graduate?
75.
Okay, by that time, they were getting more formalized.
It was very formal and it was grueling, to be honest with you, at times.
Yeah.
When did Ron Moss?
Another of the alleged innovations was the concept of preceptors. But I think,
Oh, right.
most of us who've been to other undergraduate institutions know that everybody has an advisor.
Have you had births?
In some colleges or universities, they're more prominent as advisors than in others. But Stockton was going to be more extreme in that respect and develop the basis of a discussion every semester between the faculty and preceptor. And originally, we had both preceptors and major advisors, separate faculty members for your general studies courses and for your program courses, or your professional courses. So yes, that was part of West Chili's original idea. I wanted to add another innovation that I think I would be interested in your experiences of, and that was the tendency in the early years for students to change their minds about courses they're going to teach, such that the first 2 weeks of each semester consisted of students appearing unexpectedly in your courses. And then
Yeah, it was fun. You got in there and didn't like it, so you switched.
I think that it happened in theory elsewhere, and it didn't happen in a planned way here, but it was part of the turmoil.
It happened a lot here.
That we would have that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, how long, or maybe this, do you still do the, year-long independent study program?
Independent studies produced 10% of all enrollments in the early years, because there just weren't that many courses, and enough students who were independent.
Mine was 1 year.
Yeah, but we did, we still do, I think.
Cool.
I think they still
So
do.
that was a great part of my education.
And also tutorials, one-on-one.
Yeah.
Or research work with a faculty member, that's the norm.
And they were very labor intensive for the faculty, and unless you had, I think, it's like 4 independent studies counted as 1 teaching credit. And, so if you wanted actually to replace a course with an independent studies, you needed 16 of them in a year. And each of them was almost like teaching a course.
A lot of work.
It was a lot of work, so
Very.
in math, we were doing them we had, upper level courses that might only be offered for 1 semester alternate years. And in between then, if somebody wanted the course, we ended up doing some of those as independent studies. It took a tremendous amount of time with no compensation in terms of workload or pay. It's just what we did because
Another aspect,
we love the
exciting.
material, we love the students, we love being here.
That was nice.
And,
Well, that's what really we all owe you a debt of gratitude, because whatever we wanted, we got from Stockton. Even if they didn't know how to do it, they'd say, come back tomorrow. And you would come back and everything would be figured out for you. It was like a little God just floated over here and fixed things, and then we moved into where we needed to go.
when I retired, people asked me what I was gonna do next, and my answer was, I'm going to find out how much sleep I actually need.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
When I was there, I took an art course, and the final project was do anything you want, so long as it's artistic. I forget who taught me that.
Brooke Larson?
Hmm?
Was it Brooke Larson?
Oh, he was so hot.
That's the guy that hold, that's the guy that did the statue in the Atlantic City.
Yeah.
Yes, it was him.
Oh, God, that's not such a crutch for me.
No,
That's the guy that built the crate box.
Oh, my God, you're so handsome.
So
Oh.
anyway, one of my classmates, their project was to see if you could walk across Lake Fred.
Oh, we
Hopefully
ice
during the
skated
winter time.
across it.
No,
We
no,
ice skated.
During the winter time?
no, this was in the fall, this was still, it was still warm, actually, the water's still pretty warm, he said.
Anybody walk on?
But he got up to about here. But he made it all across Lake Fred without going
You
on.
know, that wasn't real deep. I don't know how it is now, if they dredged it or whatever, but, because I fell in it.
You fell in?
Yeah, in a windy day, and whew, there wasn't like, I don't know what it looks like now, I haven't been around Lake Fred in 50 years, but I was walking from my apartment in the dorms to class, and there wasn't any like protect, just a little path, and it was windy and whoosh, right, and that's all slimy in there.
You sure somebody didn't push you?
No, I walked myself, I never walked by myself again in the winter.
Let me ask you.
I wasn't rich, so I know I didn't.
No, just frivolity.
Oh,
Are any one of you responsible for burning down the president's
I
capitol?
was wondering if I was gonna ask that.
Nobody's here to confess.
Nothing's.
are any of them?
We have a hand.
That's gonna, that comment,
Hey.
If we came to Stockton for different reasons to broaden the horizons, whatever. My current wife, we were friends in high school, she's applying to colleges. I'm gonna apply to Stockton, it's down by the beach.
That's why I-
Okay, I'm not doing
That
nothing
was my,
today.
that was the impetus.
We
of-
drive her, I drive her down, and it was, yes, the only thing here was a little log cabin with a very nice little white haired old lady in one backup. I said, you're out of your freaking mind. She goes, but it's by the beach. And here she is.
Oh, we can switch
4 years later, we hooked up and
He
getting married.
was so mad, he was like,
What, you're out of
don't
your
get ready,
mind?
honey, just sit over
That's
at the pool. I
cool,
said, sure, this is
Yeah.
state school, it'll get built.
Did the cabin got burnt down?
No, the other one.
Oh, the up, two cabins? Oh,
There were three,
Does anyone
right?
remember the Traymore Hotel when it
Yeah,
was
yes,
imploded?
yeah. So I'm
Watch it, I'm
Yes,
watching
I
it.
watched it, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I come from the area where those guys, they blew it up, come from. I live in Baltimore, came from Baltimore, and they're in Canesville, which is just north of Baltimore, controlled demolition. They blow up everything.
They had an estate sale in there prior to the implosion. And I still have artifacts from the Traymore.
Oh, I can remember coming here in the sixties and walking the boardwalks.
Architecturally.
The Clarence, the Traymore, all.
But let me ask, because we had a comment about, someone who came to Stockton for.
That was
Right
me.
here.
That
What
was
was
me.
your name?
Pat.
Pat. I'd like to ask, because one thing that comes to mind, so again, I'm an alum of Stockton, I came here in 2010. And at that time, they were putting up banners celebrating 40 years of Stockton. So it's a well-established place, at that time. And for me, one question that often stands out in my mind is, this is a new experimental college opening up in the Pine Barrens. And there's no guarantee that it's going to work. And so one thing that I often wonder, and I wonder if folks can speak to this, is what made you take that leap to come here, either as a student or faculty or staff?
Well, I already said it, because they weren't gonna make me take math and science
Yeah.
for a fine arts.
I mean, it was a totally different educational platform that they were putting in front of us at that time.
And
And they,
no foreign language required.
right, and they sent people into the high school bringing that up. I mean, I had a advisor, I don't know who he worked for, but he came into the college, to the high school. I immediately signed up. I went in, grabbed his papers, and that was it. And my parents kept saying, aren't you gonna put in any more? I said, no, I'm going there. There was no question about, it was just presented in such a way.
by the beach.
I mean, you gotta remember, it was the end of the sixties, beginning of the seventies, so none of us were looking for regular school.
Yeah.
Or we wouldn't have been,
And
I
a
think
lot
the
of us
catalog
have
I
Italian.
think the catalog I had to register was the campus was opening in the fall.
Right.
Right,
Like,
I here had a chance to talk at all, yeah.
For me, it was, when I graduated from high school, I had a very strong interest in the environment. And if I recall correctly, this is the only
Yes,
school
yeah.
that offers an
Right, environmental studies.
study
Yeah, it was the
program.
environmental school.
That was our flagship,
So, yeah.
Right,
flagship
right.
program, along with Grand Science, say it for me.
Yeah.
Ron,
I was at Cumberland County College, I was a student there, and the Stockton, they sent a recruiter to the campus there, and he was walking around talking to us. And he said he knew it was gonna get, accredited because the government was willing to put a lot of money into it. So I signed up with them, I showed him my grades, I signed up with them that day.
Whoever the recruiter was, he was good.
Yeah, because he
Well,
gave
what's
you
he
all
cost?
the county.
Yeah,
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
good.
He was one of the administrators.
Vice President.
And he came to my high school, Burlington City High School, on college night, gave the presentation. And I remember telling my high school counselor, I want to go there. What do you mean? Because of the environment and climate.
Woody said that we were going to offer the students of South Jersey a Swarthmore education at public school price, Princeton and the fall.
Well, that's what.
Anyways, that high school counselor sat me down and say, you do not want to go there. Because it's not accredited yet. And you've been accepted at Rutgers, Camden, at Rutgers, and New Brunswick, you should go there. It's all new, nothing, and actually, that's what appeals to me.
And look how you turned out.
There was a hand in the back.
So I'm just, am curious how you would compare Stockton of 2024 to Stockton of 1970.
They all got shoes off for one thing.
I joined for 35 years of Stockton, and then I wound up organizing the statewide faculty union and got involved in politics and government. But when I came back to South Jersey, I came on as an adjunct for 30 years. I left the classroom in 2012. When that question is asked of me, the last 10 years I taught were between 2002 and 2012. And the first few years I taught as a full-timer was 71 through about 76. And it's two different kinds of students. By the time I came back, and in that latest decade of this century, or well, mostly the first decade of this century, you know, students, they took classes, some of them were very bright, some of them were not, but they didn't have the spark. Many like folks like you of the early 70s or the 70s students who came to what it was then a risky college to come to, as you're saying. And that time, I don't think we got accredited until about the mid-1970s. So we.
Well, we got out, but we came here that first year.
Yeah, it was accredited when we graduated in 75, or it said so on.
I think that.
Anyway, what I would say is,
Too late now.
you were great students, those of you who were on the program.
We
Trying
were.
to compare to the ones I had later, I don't know what.
Maybe in different ways.
Maybe it was.
There's a lot of things that change, obviously, but I think one of the differences was in the beginning, it was small. The number of students that were here, it was small.
I was gonna add that.
We started with freshmen and juniors, and then every year we added another grade. So it was small.
You know what the enrollment was when we opened?
I
We
don't
got to
know
know
that has
professors. The activities were very student-centric. Professors played on softball, in the intramurals. Intramurals was the big thing. We didn't have any basketball team or baseball team. Everybody, it was like one big family. We played together, studied together, cried together. It was very, very different. So when you scale that up to where you now have two campuses, one in the Atlantic City, one over here, it becomes to look like Rutgers, and it becomes Rutgers. And it becomes those state
More
colleges.
conventional.
So, and there's nothing, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them. We're talking about the ambiance of the college, the spirit of the college changes.
And it
And
was
it becomes
inevitable.
a state
It
institution.
really was.
Still on the beat.
It had to happen.
Thank you.
I think there were, Valerie and I attended the graduation commencement this spring.
Golden Osprey, that's what this is.
And, I think there were 1,600 graduates in 2024. In our class at 74, there were 167. So that's, you know.
I mean, and I think we were something like.
There was another hand.
I know, we had 300.
One of the things that was, has not been brought up is initially, the faculty were from all over the country. They were some from the West Coast, some from the East Coast, some from Midwest. So the variety of people, even some from other countries. So that was unique too, because there was such a mix and high supposedly of, the way I understood it, really high quality of professors in there, and that is a factor. I don't know what the factor is.
To follow up on the then and now, are the students expected to refer to the professors as doctor or professor?
Yes.
I think so. I mean, my students call me Dr. Rod. But,
As an 18-year-old kid,
but
amongst brilliance, I was always intimidated to address them by their first name. Although I did, but I felt uncomfortable doing it
but I think.
out of respect.
Right.
So I think a lot of students, especially in juniors and seniors, if you work with somebody closely on an independent study, you do become first name. At least in the sciences, it is that way now. They,
The very first
Yeah.
vote taken by the first faculty meeting to be called by our first names.
There are still many of us who do, I go by name. I don't know why.
And to follow up on that, are there adjunct students filling in for the professorial duties?
No.
I mean, graduates,
There are a lot of adjunct
Graduates.
You mean actually teaching a course?
Yeah.
Teaching assistant. No, that's, no. I
Still,
don't think that.
still
No.
not.
No, there are a lot of students,
A student teaching.
no,
right,
no,
but
no,
there
no.
are a lot more adjunct faculty now.
We do have adjunct faculty.
Well, we always had that.
But not students.
No.
But that's-
I'll give you an example. When I was a graduate student at Cornell, I wound up teaching the course
Yeah.
of
Very
guy
common.
that won the Nobel Peace Prize. He was billed as the professor, but I and 4 other graduate students really taught the course.
Yeah.
So you should have got the award.
His name should have been mentioned.
I had several adjuncts
Yeah.
as when I was here, and I was here the first 4 years.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
But
thought it was
especially in certain, in education, in business,
Absolutely, and they were in the field.
right,
Yeah.
in natural science and math, I think we had, we had almost no adjuncts in the early years teaching, math and science courses. They were all full-time faculty with PhDs from California, Harvard, Yale.
Well, you mentioned something about the early faculty.
I carried it down.
Out of 55 original faculty members, 4 of us were at the free speech movement in Berkeley. 4 out of 55 wind up on the East Coast, 8 years later, or 7 years later, in the same faculty. Now, that shows you the recruiting tool they had. It may also show you the market for people coming out of graduate school at that time. But I never knew Dick when we were at Berkeley together. I was there as a government employee. I just graduated at Jesuit College up in Philadelphia and had joined the Peace Corps. And I was sent to Cal Berkeley for training with a group of other people from all over the country to go to Venezuela. And we arrived at Berkeley campus in mid-August and stayed until November. And sometime, second week of September, I believe the free speech movement broke out. And all of a sudden, we're embroiled in that. Dick was a graduate student. There were two other initial faculty members of Stockton who, like Dick, were part of the free speech movement. One of them was named Alan Steinberg. Anyone ever had that? He was a great professor. He was part of the graduate students at Berkeley. And who am I missing, Dick? Who was Mark Sanford, who was one of my colleagues in sociology. I think Mark Sanford, Alan Steinberg, and Dick Colby all went to jail, didn't you? You jailbirds?
Yeah, even the hell were in jail. Al was also arrested.
What about Mark?
Did Mark Sanford? Yeah.
I don't think Mark Sanford was arrested.
Oh, he always told me he was, so he's good.
Since we broached the subject of activism, I would just like to note that no nostalgia test about Stockton would be complete without honorary mention of the Miss America pageant and the occupation of Bork's office.
Yeah.
I was there, but I made the mistake of giving up the microphone.
Were you in the student union?
No,
Bill Buckman and that group?
I was a freelancer.
Okay.
You don't remember?
Better.
Okay.
Oh,
We're coming, go ahead.
I was familiar with
At
them,
the Mayflower, yep,
but not
the Miss America pageant.
the least bit. And quite honestly, I showed up here in January of '74 with an associate's degree. My impetus to coming here was, it was cheap,
That's cheap.
That's true.
and I thought I was getting back together with my girlfriend from high school 6 years earlier.
So you made all the right reasons you came here to Stockton.
Yeah, but I also just wanted to get my BA and get out as fast as possible.
And how did you wind up occupying the president's office?
Well, I forget what the actual issue was, but there was just a big demonstration. We marched up to his office and took it over.
What year was that?
The year I
That would
graduated.
have been in the spring of '75.
Oh, so I don't remember.
I wasn't. Okay, we run this year for the, cabin's, barbecue.
Whatever that happening, but I.
One thing you might remember in 1976, Penthouse Magazine has Stockton as one of the top party schools.
Yeah, we got
That's
that.
right.
Co-ed saw the steam room and the bar that had Penthouse on
We
top.
did have a bar. We did have a bar.
There's two things you have to mention here today. One is,
Oh, like Pam.
we had a lot of fun times. We weren't always walking for a cause and taking over the office. There were some of us that decided to street during curtain calls when there was a play going on, because that was the big time of the street. Stockton was a fun place. It wasn't like Rutgers, where they were in the middle of God knows Newark of all places. We could go to the beach, we could be happy, we could party, we could get high, we could
You could get naked.
we could get naked. In fact, when I would go for interviews for a teaching job, they would question me about the naked classes that was being held in Stockton. And of course, I didn't get to attend the naked class because my Italian father would have killed me. But anyway, but there was a lot of things that was fun back in the old days. Now, fast forward, my daughter graduated in 2010. Not that she didn't have fun, but she was studying to be a lawyer. She was very serious. She went to all her classes. You know, she would never think of not going and faking it.
Was she here at Stockton?
That's, she was Stockton grad. She went on to become a lawyer. She went to Pace University after this.
How many of you have had one of your sons or daughters attend Stockton?
That's right.
I had one.
Yeah? What year did yours graduate?
My son Alex graduated in 1987.
From here?
Yeah, from here.
Oh, okay. She
And he's been
graduated
working
in
here,
2010.
and
She was born in
He's
87.
been working here as a staff member since, I think.
Oh, no.
Tony's older than you are.
Not much.
And I kept my clothes on when I was.
I figured you did, you didn't look like the type, but they would, that would be the big question. I'm teaching interviews.
I put it up
Went
with
to that
that,
crowd.
and then you voted unanimously that I keep my clothes on.
Yeah. Lisa,
Well, that's great, Wes.
I need
Keep your pants, your panels.
No, I mean, we are coming to our close. There's a hand, I would like.
Well, I just wanted to say, I think one of the special things about Stockton that I know a lot of my classmates and I felt appreciative about was if you had an idea, you could do something and you got support. There wasn't a bureaucracy that says that these are the hoops you have to go. I'll give you an example. Ed Coleman, myself, and our preceptor at the time developed the recycling program here in Stockton.
Oh, yeah.
It was Dick Colby who was the preceptor at the time, and we actually wound up working with the maintenance department. We got barrels, we scrubbed them, we painted them, we did a study at Kern Glass in Millville. The Public Works Department picked the glass up, took it there, brought the $20 back, that probably put us in the hole. But that was the type of thing, the Kennedy Farm, the organic farm, Libby Marsh. That was another thing you could just get involved with. With support from the faculty in the school. I don't know that it's still that way today, but.
And you can design your own major too with a liberal.
Did any of you volunteer for the co-op, the food co-op?
I live next to it.
Oh.
But did you volunteer?
Alan,
Yes, I volunteered to let the deliveries in. And in return, I was allowed to have as much macaroni, Kraft macaroni and cheese that I wanted. On the upper level, right next to the food place. Yeah.
This has been a wonderful conversation, really, and in so many different directions. But as we come to our close, I wonder, are there any general thoughts about the spirit of Stockton? Here we are 50 years later, and perhaps moving forward in the next 50 years.
No.
It's on the beach.
Seems to me that the spirit is dead.
Sorry?
Seems to me that the spirit from then is no longer here.
Well,
But
that's
it has,
nationwide.
it's no longer the hippie college, as some people refer to it.
I think there's still an effort for the environment to be.
But it never achieved the Marine Consortium greatness that was one of the reasons I came here. It's still Rutgers, it's still Monmouth,
If you want to read a criticism that you just said, go back to how Dick started. David Reisman's book came out, about 6 years later? I was one of the faculty members in the interview, and it was a great interview. From my perspective, I don't know if it was great. He interviewed three members of the sociology program. Myself, a guy named Mark Stanford, a guy named Bob Hasselbeck. You may have had him. We spent an hour and a half at the old, what the heck was the name of that restaurant that was on the Black Horse Pike that was?
Kennedy?
No, up,
That was a fun place.
Saber.
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 We spent an hour and a half sitting around talking to this high-powered Harvard professor who's picking the minds of 3 young professors at one of the 5 new colleges that he picked to study. And he asked us, is the college living up to your ideals and so forth? And we gave him frank answers. And we were kind of 3 different personalities and 3 different perspectives. He also interviewed other faculty from other programs, and he interviewed many of the staff. When his book came out, Dick, you read it more recently than I have. What did he conclude about Stockton?
that it was unlikely to succeed. And the title of the book is, and you can find it in most libraries, The Perpetual Dream by David Reisman. It's about 6 experimental colleges.
I think on that note, the projection that Stockton was unlikely to succeed, that might be a great note to end on, because I think we've
2 years.